This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, there we go. I gotta turn that down. Is that better? Okay. Let me do this. Okay. A little bit back. Okay. Okay. No. There we go. Okay, just want to check online. You can see the camera and you can see the screen. Yes to both. Okay, great. So just really quick, I had a question online that how to access the PowerPoints. I post them each week. So you've all been sent an invite, and if you go to the class and you click on modules, you'll see there's a place for the PowerPoints, the handouts, and the video links and the discussions. So, but the other thing is, I haven't linked it here yet. You can also go to discussions and you'll see like, so for last week, everyone was supposed to get on and post one thing to week 3. And then now I'm moving week 4 to pin discussion because that's what we're talking about today. So back to modules. If you go to the PowerPoint handouts, you'll see they're all here, and so you can click on them there. And then if you want the video recordings from each week, you can just go to the video links, and I have them there. So if anybody's looking for them, that's where they are. Okay, so today, go to our PowerPoint for today. This will take just a minute.
Fifth floor. Going down.
Okay. All right, so getting started from last week. What was your 1 minute mindfulness technique that you tried from last week? Yes.
I just recently started yoga, I think 4 weeks ago, so I've been going once a week. And it's nice because before we actually start and then when we end, they have us do like a little bit of mindfulness for like 30 seconds at a time. But it was nice because she coached us through breathing for probably like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. But it was nice to do like before and after.
Okay, so Katie's saying that she had mindfulness breathing before and after yoga. Okay, great. Anybody else? Yeah, Jordan.
I take the train here at home, so it's been a really stressful week with assignments and stuff, and so I'll come on I have an instrumental playlist, and I'll just play that and do a minute of breathing, and just inhale and exhale for a little bit. So.
Okay. Did anybody try specifically the 5 in, the 5 out?
Yeah.
Okay. I committed to feel that point when I get really angry and I'm like that tense, that, and then right when I hit that to do the 5 in and the 5 out. And so I saw a big change in how I handled, my wall getting drawn on or various other things by just doing the breathing. It was just a way to connect that brain back. Okay. So to start this week starts a shift in what we're doing. So what we've talked about before, positive emotions, gratitude, mindfulness, and growth mindset, were really just to give you a foundation of a way to boost your positive emotions and some quick tools. And now we're going to get more specific, and we're going to talk about what you can do to boost what we call your psychological capital towards school. And it's called PsyCap for short, and it's made up of 4 things: hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and optimism. And so we're going to do one each week. So this week we're doing, and I say hope and change because hope is often tied to our change efforts. So what I'm going to ask you to do is think about something that you want to accomplish, a goal, an academic goal. It could be your dissertation, it could be a course, it could be practicum or internship. To think about something that you want as a goal, and we're going to use that for the next few weeks. So sort of laying the groundwork there, I want you to think of a person with high hope that's in your life, and think about what makes them so hopeful. Does anybody have an example they're willing to share? Oh, okay. Yeah, Katie.
I have a friend that just started a PA program, and it's like a really intense 2 years, I guess. And she's really hopeful about it, and I think what makes her so hopeful is just like motivation. She's really motivated.
She's really motivated.
Yeah.
Okay. We had an example from the prior class of someone who'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and was a runner, and how this person continued to set goals for themselves to continue races, and was doing races up until, you know, they were in a wheelchair and people were pushing them. So just that like continued focus on a goal, right? And so, and Katie mentioned someone in a BA starting a really tough program and just focusing on the motivation that it takes. When I think of a high hope individual, I think of Dr. Hay in the business psychology program. And I think one of the reasons I think that is because he always has something positive to say. So even when it's a bad situation, he's always reframing it into the positive. And I noticed he gave some feedback this week, and in person he said, oh, this has got a lot of work to go. And to the student he said, you know, congratulations, this is such a huge milestone that you've gotten this far. Okay, now here are the things I need you to change. So his outtake on that, and I think the other thing is he always views students as not there yet, so never they can't do it, or I'm questioning their ability, but they're just not there yet. And so kind of that mindset always makes me think of him being very hopeful. Okay, so Karina online says, my best friend's exactly like that. He always sees the bright side of things. Okay, so hope is the process of thinking about one's goals, combined with the motivation to move toward the goal, which is agency, and concrete ways of achieving the goal, which is pathways. So you can see how that kind of wraps up all the things we were talking about, the motivation, the goals. And hope is the motivating force for change. And in order to hope, clients need to hold a belief that change is possible. And this ties back to what we learned about growth mindset. So if you believe it's fixed, then it's hard to have hope. Okay, so hope is made up of a couple of different things. We have the goals, which are sort of the context that anchors everything, and then we have the willpower, which is the motivation, and the way power, which is the different pathways you can get there. So goal is what the person wants to achieve. Agency is the belief in one's ability, and that belief can come from self-efficacy, which we'll talk about next week. Really kind of relying on your past successes to believe you can be successful in the future. And then generating pathways. So instead of saying there's one way to this goal, hope is I just got blocked. I'm going to find another way around to my goal, right? So you can probably think of times when you got blocked from a goal and you just gave up and thought that's not possible, or when you got blocked and you said, I'm still going and I'm going to get there, right? And so that's a combination of your agency and coming up with a creative, different way to get there. Okay, so goals are the anchors for hope, right? So you have to want something. There has to be something you're after. And hope can't exist in a vacuum. Again, you have to be able to articulate what it is that you're going for. And so there are many benefits to hope. Achievement in all sorts of domains, academic, athletic, military, political, vocational, freedom from anxiety and depression, good social relationships, and physical well-being. Also, there's higher self-esteem, higher perceived problem-solving abilities, higher perception of control, and more optimism, as well as more positive effect and expecting positive outcomes. So you can see that this hope is tied to optimism. Okay, so one of the things that's helpful is coaching enhances hope, right? So whether you're doing counseling as a counselor or coaching on the business side, one of your jobs is to increase their hope. And so there's one research study showing that the cognitive behavioral solution-focused life coaching program found that participating in this 10-week program enhanced goal striving, well-being, hope, and your future jobs will involve you to someone who coach, right, and using this hope. And even someone such as myself, I have a coach. And when I'm getting stuck on something, I go in and she says the most simple things, but they literally change my mindset from I can't get past this to, oh, here's 3 easy ways that I could change what I'm doing to get around it. So sometimes it just takes that other person. Okay, so now I want you to practice with the goal that you have in mind for your schoolwork. And first, think about your hopefulness about meeting this goal on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm not going to ask you for this score, but what I'm going to do is just ask you to write some things down about your goal. If you're in your book, there's some room to write. And if you don't have any paper, just ask and we'll get some. Okay, so write down what this goal is. Write down 1 to 10 how hopeful you are about meeting this goal. And then the second step is to start writing, try to write 2 to 3 pathways to achieve this goal. Okay, so after you've generated 2 to 3 pathways, the next thing is to think about your intention. And really an agency is the motivation. What is your motivation for this goal, right? So you want to find something better than, I just don't want to fail this or do poorly. You want to find a higher motivation. So something that's going to be more meaningful to you. Okay, so we're gonna keep writing on this goal. We're gonna keep going. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're talking about. So you've got a baseline, what your hope is for this goal, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually work to enhance your hope and enhance your ability to achieve this goal. So again, the way that we do that is pathways, agency, narrative, and curious questions. So the first thing in enhancing pathways, and this is straight from the Shane Lopez book called Making Hope Happen. I personally haven't read it, but hear phenomenal things about it. And he's a phenomenal person. So the first thing to do is to break a long-range goal into steps or sub-goals. And so what you want to avoid is thinking about it all at once, right? This is especially important with a dissertation. But anything that you're having difficulty with, what can you do 30 minutes or an hour a day? What, you know, set a very short time frame to do. Even something like losing weight. What can you do 20 to 30 minutes a day towards that goal? So setting some very short but daily sub-goals will help. Then concentrate on just the first goal. So, you know, if you've broken it down, really focus on what it is you need to do right now, putting the other things and all of the other things out of your mind, right? Another good example of this, I rehabbed a house pretty much by myself. And at some points I would come in and I would look at the gutted thing and think about all the things I would have to do and just sit down and cry. And it would be so overwhelming, and I would think, why did I think I could do this? And I don't have these skills. And so, you know, not before I knew this, I would just say, okay, what's the thing I'm going to do today? And I would get up and I would YouTube that one skill, right? Or I would call somebody who could help me through that one thing. And then it was just a series of those one things of something I had absolutely no idea how to do, ended up doing it, right? But again, it's different points when I would start to stack it all up in my mind of everything I had to do. Sometimes I do that with the week. In the beginning of the week, I'll stack up all the things I have to do. And then I'm like, oh, you know, and I'm in a panic versus what is it I need to do right now? What is it I've got to do today? So breaking everything down can be really helpful. So again, practicing different routes, thinking that there's one way and there's only one way to get there. And then when you fail in that way, that's sort of setting yourself up for disappointment. Rarely is it ever one way, so generating multiple ways to get there. Mentally rehearsing scripts for what you should do when you encounter a blockage, right? So not being pessimistic, but planning for things to go wrong. And this is critical. If you need a new skill to reach your goal, learn it. So I, again, will frequently have a big goal, and I won't even start that goal because there's a skill somewhere buried in there that I don't have, and I know it, and I just am like, well, I don't know how to do that. And so I just stop and I don't do the whole thing. Versus if I break it out and then I say, oh, here's one thing. I don't know how to do graphics really well in PowerPoint. Okay, so I'm going to spend 20 minutes for every day for 1 week watching some YouTube videos until I'm feeling better about it, right? But I can let that just sort of vague awareness that I don't have a skill stop me from even starting. Okay, and the last one's a repeat. Okay, so another thing that you can do, any of you have heard of mind mapping? Okay, something we do in the IO program, and there's a whole book on how to do it, but basically it's brainstorming on paper, and you're just writing, and you just write as many ideas as you can, and this gives you an idea. This is for someone who was starting a new business and wanted to increase their lead generation, right? Very overwhelming thing to do. And so what she did is she just started breaking it out into the different ways she could do it, and then more ideas about each way. And then all of a sudden you have a page full of ideas. So you've essentially generated alternative pathways, right? And so you can try some of the mind mapping today. Okay, another thing is, again, a list from Lopez's book on enhancing agency. And remember, agency is your intention and your motivation. So talking to yourself that you've chosen to do this and it's your job and you're going to stick to it. The second thing is talking to yourself in positive voices. And we're going to talk about this with optimism and resilience too. The internal dialogue is key. And so if you catch yourself, this is so hard, I don't understand it, I don't understand what to do. I'm going to forget something. I know I'm not going to do everything right. That kind of internal dialogue will make that happen, right? And so I gave an example in the last class that when I was packing to take 2 toddlers to Columbia, I had just had this in my own positive, when I was getting the certification, I had just done this week on the positive mind chatter. And I learned that the biggest fear we have is that we can't handle it. That's always our biggest fear. And so saying to yourself, I can do this, I can handle this, can counter that really vague fear that's in the back of your mind. And so when I was packing, which is very challenging for me to remember everything, I remember I just kept saying, I can do this, I can do this. And as I started building that positive energy, I started feeling so good, and I started having such a good time packing, which is normally this dreaded task where I'm like, and because in my mind I'm thinking about how terrible things can go, right? If I forget something. But that self-talk was able to really help me stay on task. Be able to laugh at yourself, especially if you encounter some impediment. So instead of just, going in a downward spiral, being able to laugh off, and part of that can come from, well, I'll try option number 2 now, because you've generated the alternative pathways. And then if you totally solidly get blocked on something, find an alternative goal, right? Not just giving up on the whole thing, but find a different way. And finally, to enjoy the process of getting to your goals and not focusing on the final attainment. And as we say in Buddhism, the path is the goal, right? And so instead of not being able to enjoy anything till you get to the goal, you want to be able to enjoy the way you're getting to the goal, right? Because it's a much longer period of getting to the goal and a very short period of getting the goal. So making sure you're enjoying it on the way. Okay, so narrative. Again, relying back on a story about your past when you've been successful can help you have fertile ground for planting and growing seeds of hope in the future. So as a client, as a coach or a counselor or a clinician, you can ask questions to direct them towards hopeful elements of their life. And so there's this list of questions. I'm not going to go over them, but they're in your book. So they're the handout for, I've got several handouts for today. So this is just a great shortcut if you're thinking I need to build hope in a client. Okay, and then just some overall ones that are good. You know, talking to a friend, talking to anybody. What's the best thing you can hope for given the situation? I hear that you're currently facing X. Given what you can only control, that you can only control your own thoughts, feelings, and actions, what could you hope for? And what are your hopes for the future? Where do you see yourself a year from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now? What will motivate you to work towards your goal? What excites you about your goal? What do you need in order to bring this goal into fruition? And what do you hope for in family and friends? Another one that I think is really important to change, it's not in the slide, is what one thing can you start doing today? So that's what I would ask in a coaching situation. What one thing can you change starting today? Something really simple. Again, very similar to the way that I ask you all to take 1 minute to do something. You know, if you plan something really long and elaborate, you're much less likely to do it, but 1 minute a day you can handle, and one thing a day you can handle. Okay, barriers to hopelessness. So sometimes people don't want to be hopeful because they're afraid of disappointment. Similarly, they might have a fear of jinxing themselves by holding a positive intention and thus ruining it. And what we know from the literature is this is absolutely not true. More positive emotions and more hope always lead to better things. And you may not get that thing you were after for, but you will be in a better place than just, I can't wish good things for myself because I'm afraid if I wish good things for myself, they won't happen. And some people have learned helplessness, a state where they learn what they do, nothing matters. And I think I took out this slide, or it may be in one of the next weeks, but what they don't tell you about Martin Seligman's famous learned helpless experiment with the dog. You guys remember this one where they shocked the dog and the dog can't get away and they figured out that dogs learned helpless. What they didn't tell you was 1/3 of the dogs didn't respond that way. They continued to hope, right? So it wasn't all the dogs, which is sort of what brought Martin to landing on positive psychology. Another thing to remember that's a barrier is anxiety and worry about the future inhibit the ability to think hopefully about the future. So if you're worrying, you're not being hopeful. Kind of the whole, like, you know, if you're stressed, you can't feel blessed. So again, a good injection right there would be thinking about what you're grateful for. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to practice these handouts that I just went over. They're in your packet. And so first, let's work on increasing your pathways. So you've written down 2 to 3, and I'm going to ask you to use these tools to come up with 2 to 3 more pathways than you originally had. Oh yeah, hold give me 1 second. I was chatting in private when I meant to be chatting in public. Let me just fix this. Okay, I have Amber, Elaine, Emily Broadhurst, Karina, Miriam. I hope I say this right, Moises, Phyllis, and Sharon Pappas. Okay. And I just want to ask for the people online, there's 2 different callers. Could you email Sonette and let her know who you are so we can take attendance? I don't think they can chat. Okay, so the second thing, if you've done your 2 to 3 alternative pathways, is to look and see how can you increase your agency from the handout in your book. Elaine's asking what page. Okay, so for those of you that are online, there's some question about where to access this book. I'm just going to show you really quick. Again, if you go to modules and go to PP handouts, this is the book that we're using. These are just some of the, before I change it together into a book. But if you open up this book, okay. All right, so the last two things are planning for barriers. So think about some barriers that you might encounter and what will you do? Okay, so how was that? How did it feel from the first time to the second time you did it? Were you able to push yourself and go a bit further? Yeah. Did you feel more hopeful? Yeah, okay. Good. Okay. So again, this is something you can do with yourself. It's something you can do with your clients, something you can do with your friends, and just sort of to bring you in the loop. We were talking online about people were saying they're using it with their family, they're using it where they're practicum, where they're working. And I was saying that's great. And somebody was asking, oh, they wanted to get certified. And if you want to get certified, you can check out the Flourishing Center. They have, it's like a year-long course. They have online and one here in Chicago. So if anybody who's interested, you could do that. But the other thing I would remind you is anything that we've learned through the first few weeks, you know, your 3 good things exercises, the mindfulness, the breathing, any of that you can incorporate into what we're doing here. Like it's all synergistic. So again, you know, if you're feeling stuck on an obstacle or how to get around an obstacle, bring up gratitude. Bring up something, you know, that you're grateful for, similar, you know, and sort of trying to get it going. So again, you can use these things all in conjunction. So this week, I'm going to ask you, what's the one thing you can start doing to increase your hope, right? So maybe thinking about your plan, what's one thing you can start doing today? And then I have a discussion board up for you to share how it goes this week. So before next class, see if you can get on there and post and share how it went for you. All right, thank you guys. Oops. I'm gonna unmute everybody. Oh, you know what? I didn't publish it.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
See you next week.
Bye, thank you.
So I told him last week, I'm gonna have this week to see how it goes. Yeah. Bye.
Bye, thank you. Okay. What?
Yeah, it seems like.
The discussion post?
Yeah.
Because I didn't publish it, they're just telling me online, they're like, it's not there. I'm like, no, I put it, it's there. And then there's like one little button you click to make sure everybody sees it. And for whatever reason, it's on default if I don't remember to do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought I was missing something because we were supposed to make a post.
Yeah, I know it's up there. And I was like, not one person wrote in it. I'm like, oh, everybody, it's midterms. Everybody must be busy. I didn't do anything. Oh, that should have been my first clue, right? That it was a user error. Okay, I'm gonna end the meeting. Bye everybody online. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you.